Americans? Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator.
But Clinton's visceral response only seemed to make John McCain, a chief crusader on Benghazi, even more determined.
The answers, frankly, that you've given this morning are not satisfactory to me.
McCain asked a slew of questions rapid fire, including why it took CNN's own Arwa Damon to find slain Ambassador Chris Stevens' notebook, which warned about security.
On the anniversary of the worst attack in American history, September 11th, we didn't have Department of Defense forces available for 7 hours. 2 brave Americans died in the last hour.
To her old friend McCain, Clinton was more restrained.
Well, Senator, I understand your very, very strong feelings. You knew Chris, you were a friend of Chris, and we just have a disagreement. We have a disagreement about what did happen and when it happened with respect to explaining the sequence of events.
Still, she did not answer McCain's questions. Her 2.5-hour testimony was vintage Hillary Clinton, except perhaps for this.
For me, this is not just a matter of policy, it's personal.
The woman who has been through more public trials than most without getting emotional choked up.
I stood next to President Obama as the Marines carried those flag-draped caskets off the plane at Andrews. I put my arms around the mothers and fathers, the sisters and brothers, the sons and daughters, and the wives left alone to raise their children.
Not once, but twice.
The 2 hardest calls that I made were obviously to the families of Ambassador Stevens and Sean Smith.
Even before the hearing began, this reminder that Clinton, a former senator, was on familiar terrain, taking the unusual step of greeting former colleagues behind the dais. Like Clinton herself, 2 GOP senators here are potential 2016 presidential contenders, Marco Rubio and Rand Paul. Paul made no secret of his ambition.
Had I been president at the time and I found that you did not read the cables from Benghazi, you did not read the cables from Ambassador Stevens, I would have relieved you of your post. I think it's inexcusable.
He was reacting to Clinton admitting she never saw requests for more security at the Benghazi consulate.
They didn't come to me. I didn't approve them. I didn't deny them.
The outgoing Secretary of State defended Susan Rice, passed over to be her successor after Republicans accused her of misleading Americans in the days after the attack. And Clinton dismissed questions about talking points Rice used that left out reports of al-Qaeda involvement, which Republicans call politically motivated.
I personally was not focused on talking points. I was focused on keeping our people safe.
Now, on those talking points, when Republicans accused the administration of misleading the American people about what happened, they questioned why UN Ambassador Susan Rice was the one to appear on all 5 of those Sunday shows when she was not directly involved in dealing with the attack or its immediate aftermath. And Hillary Clinton said she must confess that going on Sunday shows, Wolf, is not her favorite thing to do. I'm sure she did not mean when you were a host of a Sunday show.
But you know what? It was very interesting. I thought she didn't go on those 5 Sunday shows because she was tired, exhausted, not feeling well. She didn't say any of that today. She said, that's not one of my favorite things to appear on those Sunday talk shows. That's why she didn't do it.
She admitted it. I guess, you know, on her way out, which is effectively what this was, a very, very long day of an exit interview and not the finest moment for her State Department, she felt a little bit free.
And that's when the White House asked Susan Rice to do it, and we know what happened as a result of that to Susan Rice and to the Obama administration. Dana, thanks very much. So what's angered a lot of critics is that appeals for more security at the U.S. consulate in Benghazi went unheeded. Our own senior international correspondent Arwa Damon found the final warning from the U.S. ambassador in the ruins of the consulate. Arwa was one of the few reporters who actually went to Benghazi in the immediate aftermath of the disaster. Arwa is joining us now from Beirut. Arwa, the Libyan government said in the days immediately following the attack that they had suspects in custody. They had leads they were chasing. Right now, I believe no one is in custody right now. Isn't that right? It's pretty disgraceful what's going on.
It most certainly is, Wolf, and that was what was actually quite interesting about Clinton's testimony, because this really wasn't an issue that was brought up. Where is the investigation when it comes to what the Libyans are doing and what the United States is itself doing? What steps are being taken to ensure that these extremist al-Qaeda affiliated militias are no longer able to operate with such impunity in a country like Libya that, as Secretary Clinton herself highlighted, not only threatens the security in Libya, but also the funneling of weapons, potentially of fighters, to other areas like Algeria, like Mali. We've been seeing, of course, conflicts erupting, fighting erupting, terrorist attacks being taken out in those two countries, and more broadly speaking, to al-Qaeda in the Maghreb. The Libyan government has effectively done nothing, and these extremist militias, Ansar al-Sharia, for example, are arguably more powerful and influential now than they were when this attack took place. There have been various reports of an ongoing intimidation campaign when it comes to people that might potentially be witnesses when it comes to what happened at the consulate itself. The Libyan head of the investigation was kidnapped in Benghazi. He disappeared. Nobody knows where he is at this point in time. And these militias that were, if you'll remember, in the days after the attack, driven from their bases in Benghazi by the population itself, well, they've managed to return. So the big question is, what is the U.S. doing to make sure that these militias are no longer able to operate to such a degree in such a critical country like Libya?
Arwa, remind our viewers, you were there in the days that followed the killing of the ambassador and the 3 other Americans. You walked through that compound, and we're showing our viewers some pictures right now of those days. You found the journal that the ambassador was keeping. What was it like? Was there any investigation? Were there any Libyan or U.S. officials really there?
There were no U.S. officials on site, Wolf, and if memory serves me right, it actually took the FBI a few weeks to arrive to the location of the consulate. Libyan officials on site, no, there were none at all. Initially, because some senior Libyan government officials were touring the site themselves, they did have security with them, but once they left, it was basically us, the owners of the compound, and a number of curious residents of Benghazi continuing to sift through what was left behind. And as we discovered when we found the journal and some other documents, there was still sensitive material left behind. In fact, other journalists went back to that very location weeks after we did and continued to find sensitive information. What was quite striking being on site there was not just the chillingness of being where such a horrific attack took place, but also the fact that there was this severe lapse in security, that everyone was telling us that it was a coordinated, complex attack. But then we were also quite taken back at the fact that there was no immediate signs of any sort of investigation. The site wasn't secured or being treated as a crime scene.
It was pretty shocking when you think about it, and as you well reported at the time, Arwa, thank you very much. We're going to get Republican reaction to what we just heard from the Secretary of State, Senator Rand Paul, a new member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who basically said, and you heard him in Dana Bash's piece, saying if he had been president, he would have fired Hillary Clinton for the way she dealt with the buildup to what was going on. He's joining us live later this hour. Also, other important news, a stunning turnabout by the Pentagon. CNN has learned about a major new announcement involving women in combat. And after the inaugural balls, a wild party over at the White House, including Lady Gaga. We have the pictures and details. Lots of news happening today right here in the Situation Room.